what I would like to discuss in my presentation and in the last 20 minutes, as always in this moment, and when we talk about design and design thinking, there are many questions about where design thinking is going, especially in this community, which is a community that is very engaged in try to lift design thinking in an approach that is very, very strategic and having a big impact. What I would like to do is address some of the questions that probably most of you have in the front of this big shift that we have in front of us. I mean, everyone is asking themselves what will happen in the future. And of course, also this community asks themselves what will happen to design thinking in the future. And so lucky enough, recently with some colleagues especially with Claudio, that you know very well, Claudio Dell'Era, and a colleague from an American university, Scott Swan, we have been trying to ask this question to the scientific community, to the global scientific community, who is doing research in design thinking, and so we have the chance to have a little bit of a picture of where design thinking has been and where design thinking is going, especially in this moment. So the basic idea here is to say, can we use information that we have from where research is going in this moment to understand where the future of design thinking is? The experience I want to tell you is this special issue of a journal, which is called the Journal of Product Innovation Management. Is a journal that is, I would say, the most prominent scientific journal on innovation management in scientific community. So it's a very, very privileged perspective of what's going on in research on design thinking. And we have been making a call for contribution specifically on the study of design thinking. And we have been receiving 65 articles, which is a considerably huge number given the size of the community, from 190 scholars, more or less, and from 40 countries. So more or less, we have had the lucky opportunity and lucky chance to have a window of what's going on out there. It's not only the article that we got, but an idea that Claudio had was to organize a workshop with these scholars to talk about the articles and reflect about a few questions, what's going on in the world of design, what needs to be discovered. I don't know if you even see there, one of the contributors, you see there in a little image is Don Norman, which probably most of you know. Don Norman is one of the most prominent thinker on design that we have. So really a rich perspective on where design thinking is going. What were the questions that the scientific community is asking in this moment? First of all, what is design thinking? Maybe you will laugh. I mean, after 20 years of design thinking, we are still asking ourselves the question, what design thinking is. The scientific community still don't know. Everyone has his own perspective. I have my own, Gina has her own, but in reality, there is no clear answer about that. So we hope that with that reflection, if we're doing this in this community, we will find at least a more stable answer. The second one is something that no one ever asked. Does it work? I mean, the narrative so far in design thinking is to convince others that work, but most of the time there's no real proof about that. So does it work? And especially compared to what? Because when you say this works better than something else. So does it work? And especially the big question is, will it work in the new scenario that we are having? So first reflection about design thinking, and here I'm quite aligned with what Gina said before. And she looks at design as a social technology, design thinking, sorry. And especially what is emerging slowly, that, I mean, we need to clearly distinguish design and design thinking. They're two totally different things, okay? In which sense? The sense that it's like the analogy of management and, I don't know, just in time, okay, or total quality management, or whatever it is. Design is a practice. Okay, it's like management is a practice. Design is a practice, and like Carlo Ratti was saying before, is the practice of imagining new possibilities instead of describing how things are, imagining how things could be. That's a practice, and it's a practice that is defined typically. How do you define a practice like management or design? It's a set of problems. So design is about that set of problems that are concerned with imagining new possibilities. Okay, in Italian we say progetto, gettare in avanti, so imagining new possibilities. Okay, and as all practices, it's not better or worse than other thing, because a set of problems is not better or worse than other thing. It's an area action, and it simply needs to be understood better. So when we think about design, we can build theories about design. We can understand design, and we cannot question is better or worse than something else. It's like say, as you know, healthcare is better or worse than something. Healthcare is an area of practice. So design is a practice. What is design thinking instead? Design thinking instead is, let's say, I like to call it a paradigm, or we can use the word of Jenna Lietka, or it's a social technology, or is a set of tools, is an approach. So it's a way to act into this area of practice. Okay, it's like total quality management. There is management. Management is a practice. It's not better or worse than something else. It's an area of action. And then you can have just-in-time, total quality management, business process engineering. These are different kind of approaches or paradigms. It's the how. It's not the area of the problem. It's how do you solve that problem. So design thinking is a paradigm. And in that case, as all paradigms, the problem is not to understand and develop theories. So design thinking is not a theory. It's a set of tools. But it needs to be proven. Proven means, does it work better and tested better than something else? Okay, so this is very important because especially, and I'm always concerned with my colleague of the design school, a design school is a school which address a set of practices, and design thinking is only a little big or small, I don't know, it's a part of that, but it's not the only thing. And by the way, I would say in my feeling is that design thinking is a managerial paradigm more than a real design paradigm. So it's a way to explain how to design in a business context or an organizational context. And as I said before, design thinking is only one of a strong variety, great variety of approaches that we know that can be used to solve problems and imagine new things and innovate and design. I mean, engineers are, as Simon said, they are also designers. So there is engineering thinking, there is system thinking, there is scientific exploration, there is problem solving, there is innovation management, and even in organizational design, there is change management, there are diagnostic approaches, dialogic approaches. So the set of, we were talking before about agile, lean, so the set of possible approaches and paradigms that we can use to solve problems and imagine the future is quite distinctive. I mean, there is a lot of variety there. So design thinking is only one of these, okay? And in architecture, we will come back later, there are many different approaches to this. So it's only one. So that's the positioning. And I mean, we don't enter into the details of it, but what matters more is we can organize all these design paradigms, of which design thinking is only one. We can organize all these design paradigms according to, first of all, one dimension. And I'm sorry if I maybe sound a little bit academic tonight, but sometimes is needed just to go a little deeper in what is behind something that we use every day. Okay, we can look at different ways to design in basically two different ways. One is more positivistic. Okay, what does it mean, positivistic? It means that the other one I would say is constructivist. So what does it mean, positivistic? Positivistic means that it's a classic approach which is called problem solving, and which is, I'm an engineer by education, and it's classic of engineering school, okay? What does it mean? A positivistic approach to design and innovation is that we assume that there is a problem, Okay, there's a problem out there, and this problem need to be solved. And you are creative if you solve it better than others or with other solution. But that problem does exist. It's out there. The reality exists. It's clearly defined. What we need to do is to find this problem, okay, and to understand this problem better. But it's out there. It's given. Okay. So an engineer basically is like this. So especially when you deal with the technical system, it almost looks like the problem is there. Okay, you have a machine to fix. It's very clear, and the only thing you can do is to understand the problem, then fix it. Another way of looking at reality instead is constructivist, which is typical not of problem solving but of sense making. And this is a situation in which problems are not out there; they are not given. The problems are constructed socially by people. I mean, most of the time, what I see as a problem, another person sees as an opportunity. Another person say, but that's marginal. It's not even a problem. So, I mean, there is no real problem given out there. It depends on how we look at the things. And given that many people look at things differently, slowly this construction is what is a problem? What are the border of this problem? Whether maybe it's an opportunity, maybe the problem doesn't exist. It really depends on interaction between people. Okay, so problem depends on how we see things, and they can even be opportunities, not even problems. And these problems, in reality, in the constructivist approach to design, you don't understand the problem and then you solve it, which is classical problem solving. Instead, the first thing you do, not the first, but along the design process, you design the problem, or you design the opportunity. You don't only design the solution, but you also design the way you look at the context around you. Is a result of the design process. Okay, so for example, in design thinking, we can imagine. Actually, I'm almost tempted to ask you where it is. So the question I can give you: guess where design thinking is? Not design. Design is both. You can have in design, you can have both positivistic approaches and constructivist. We will see it later. But where is design thinking? Start to imagine. Think about the method, think about the double diamond, think about all the things you know about design thinking. Where is design thinking position? Is it more positivist or more constructivist? Okay, that's one way of looking at design paradigms. The second way of looking at design paradigms is there are some design paradigms that are more focused on the user, okay? Especially when they think user means single user, basically. There is a client out there, a customer, someone who's using a product, and we design for that person. And other design paradigms, they are more targeted to address situations in which there are multiple stakeholders. Of course, also those who focus on the user, they sell. There is a user, but then there are other stakeholders. But there are some design partners that are really focused on bringing together different players. They are all playing on the same level. Okay. You can imagine, for example, a classic is that every design paradigm that is focused, they come from the world of business, typically is single user focus, which is the customer focus. Architecture is typically multi-stakeholder because in architecture, especially in urban design, the number of stakeholders there are so many different players. They are all users, all with the same level of importance. Okay. So traditionally, and here is where the story was. It's traditionally, I mean, I'm an engineer. Traditionally, the most classic design paradigm that we use were focused on, they were mainly positivistic, focused on single user. I'm an engineer. Engineering thinking is typically like this. Even in innovation management, business applied to product development, business literature, typically positivistic and single user focus. Okay. Why this worked in the past? Because typically problems were simple. How do we design a refrigerator? And that's the need is very easy. People need to refrigerate food, but the solutions are complicated. So in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, problems were quite simple. To finding a solution, the technology were quite complicated. Second, and if this is the context, what do you need? You need technical expertise because the solutions are complicated, and you need a lot of modeling, to find out how to solve the problem. It's really, consequential, deductive, and so on. What is happening meanwhile? Why design thinking has become so popular? design thinking became popular, first of all, because problems have become a little more complicated. The solution, actually, what's happening is that nowadays we have technology, they are so much developed that the solution, in a way, are much more advanced than the problem that they try to solve. And this is a framework that comes from a book that you say, okay, nowadays technologies are much more advanced than what humans actually know to do. And design, we can imagine design as a way to fill this gap between technologies and human, is a way to make technologies more accessible to human. This is especially because of digital technologies, and especially because these digital technologies have left the space of business-to-business application and SAP and all mainframes, and they're entering the life of everyone, everyday people. And these people, instead of user in businesses, there's normal people, my mom, everyone in the street, they are normal users. So there is this gap, and design is highly in demand because of this. The second reason why there's been a big diffusion of design thinking is that innovation nowadays is carried on by non-professional innovators. So this assumption that you need technical expertise for designing, it doesn't work anymore. So instead of being a scientist, trying to develop some chemistry, nowadays, I mean, this is images used often to show the difference. What is innovation today? You see to the left, a person inventing a new medicine, and to the right, you see some pharmacists who are not technically expert. They are managing a pharmacy, but they are trying to reinvent the experience of what does it mean to get into a pharmacy and buy some new products. So everyone becomes an innovator. This is because of digitalization. Digitalization has brought innovation in every space of the organization. So these two trends, the fact there are non-expert users and non-expert innovators, had questioned the basic assumption of traditional paradigms of design, where you have technical expertise and model. And therefore, design thinking comes. And here you can see where design thinking is. Design thinking is an approach that is very good because in our context, problems started to be a little more complicated to understand what really people can do and users can do when they access technology. And solution in this case needs to be novel. They cannot be found within the scope of traditional engineering thing. You need to look outside of the classical field of expertise. And so design thinking is an approach which is user-centered, based on ideation, iterative, and learning. So basically, and this thing that Carlo and Janet said before now is a kind of design for non-experts, to the point that sometimes we exaggerate a little bit, and we make it so simple that actually we make design for non-experts that remain non-experts in what they do, because design thinking is still very complicated. Okay, this is what's design thinking and when it works. When it works. It works when we try to address a problem that is clearly, well, it can be complicated, but it's out there. So this positivist perspective, which we don't question the problem. We need to understand the problem better. We need to understand the user better. It's perfect. Where is the future? Well, what's happening now is two things. First of all, what's happening is that ideas are increasingly easy to find nowadays. We know it. Solutions are easy to find. What is becoming very complicated is that the problems that we face in front of us are very, very sophisticated. They are not just complicated. They are really difficult to understand in terms of the meaning of this problem. Do they really make sense? What is the problem that makes more sense to address? What are we in front of us? And I like what Carlos said before, especially, because we have been losing by focusing on this idea that problems are given. We are so focused on this that we imagine design as problem solving. And the more we solve problem, the more we create a future, which is a problem solved future. But the real power of design is not to solve the problem of the past, which keeps you anchored in the past, but to imagine a future, which is not the son of the past. It's a future that is reimagined. And the only way to reimagine the future is not to solve problems, but to imagine and make sense of where we want to go. So this is the first change. The most complicated thing nowadays is to frame the problem. And problems which are not given. The second thing, that most of the problems we address today are what we call wicked problems, and they escape, and there are multiple stakeholders, especially problems that are connected to transformation in organizations, where there's not just one user, there's not one customer, and all problems which are connected to social challenges, where there are multiple stakeholders. Okay. So, and unfortunately, design thinking is not being designed for that. Design thinking has been conceived for one user, and it's extremely positivistic. If you look at how for example, the double diamond is constructed, there is a clear phase of problem understanding, and then once it's there, you close it and then you solve it. Whereas, as I said before, when you make sense of things, you design the problem and you design the solution continuously, and it's a kind of negotiation between different stakeholders. Can we expand design thinking there? I don't think so. I don't think so, because this is a debate between Herbert Simon and Michael Csikszentmihalyi. Michael Csikszentmihalyi said, accused Simon that they had a strong debate, because the idea of Simon, you can extend positivistic approaches, problem solving, also in problem framing. Yeah, problem framing more or less is like problem solving. It's an indented problem. And while Csikszentmihalyi, which is a famous psychologist, say, no, these two problems are a completely different nature. Problem solving and what is called problem finding, they are totally different. So we cannot expand design thinking there. What we need a different kind of paradigm, which I call reflective practice. I don't call reflective practice. Is come from a professor of the MIT, whose name is Donald Schoen, was mentioned before by Francesco Zurlo, and the reflective practice is exactly what we need today. And it's like to say, I would say, in terms of scholarship, it's like moving from Stanford to the MIT to search for the new solution. And that's the reason why I'm very happy that Carlo is here. And it's really building on the capability to make sense of design problems between multiple stakeholders. Just one note, because time is gone. I believe that this is the approach we need, especially in this moment where design is moving from solving problems for products or services into addressing organizational change. Many of us, even myself, are trying to think about how can we use design for leadership, for redesigning organization, for transformation. And many consultancies are using design for transformation. Well, when you apply design to transformation, transformation is constructivist, so there's no real problem. You need to find it, and it's multiple stakeholder. So we need a different kind of practice rather than design thinking to address this. And I believe the good news that I would say, I really believe that design can be, you can look at transformational problem in terms of design, and that reflective practice can really help us to do this, because the world of leadership is looking for new ways to do transformation. It's desperately seeking for new meaning what they do. And design has this power. One of the things that I observed recently is that many organizations start to have purpose statements. Every leader wants to change the world, but all purpose statements look the same. And I was talking a week ago with my old friend Ezio Manzini, and it reminded me one sentence. He told me one, every business talk about many things, especially in business school. Why we never talk about the most important thing, which is the product and services the organization do. So you have this fantastic purpose statement of organization and want to change the world, but they forget that the real most important way to create meaning and change the world is by making product and services that are more meaningful. That's the reason why organization exists. So design is exactly this. Design is meaning. It's about creating new meaning, but it's also this power of transferring this meaning, not from a purpose statement, but really bringing everything down to the ground, to the real reason why organizations do things, which is product and services. If we connect these two things, the will of purpose and the will of transforming leadership with the capability to turn this into meaningful product and services, this is where design, I believe, has a great future to help organizations transform themselves. Thank you very much.